Hello everyone, I'm your host Pensyfan19 and welcome to the June 2025 Pensyfan Periodical. This is a monthly news series which covers most of the major railroading headlines from around the world, as well as my opinions on them. We have a lot of articles to go over today, one of the most interesting we've had in a while, so with that in mind, let's get rolling. Up first, we have our first ever 4-in-1 for an opening story, as a grand total of 4 heritage units were revealed in the span of just 3 weeks during this month, most of which within days of each other. What makes this story particularly interesting is the symmetry of it all, as 2 of the heritage units represented Delaware and Hudson, while the other 2 represented the MTA. Both railroads primarily ran in the state of New York and were known for using Alco engines. 2 of the heritage units involved were repainted into their original as-built livery, and the order of announcement was DNH, MTA, MTA, DNH, a 1-2-2-1 stabilizer. The first of these heritage units was Norfolk Southern 1080, an EMD SC78, which was painted in the iconic DNH lightning stripe livery, based on a Facebook and employee vote for a new heritage unit back in November, which first resulted in the Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia Railroad getting their own heritage unit. Initially confused as to why the tag won the vote, despite DNH receiving the majority of the votes in the Facebook post, rail fans have been begging NS to make a DNH heritage unit ever since, and they were pleasantly surprised to see photos of a recently repainted engine in DNH blue, especially with said unit being a less common EMD instead of the typical GEVO or AC44C6M. The second of the 4 involves one of 2 railroads owned by the MTA, namely Metro North 203, a GEP32AC painted in the railroad's Millennium livery. Local rail fans are especially happy to see this particular unit repainted, as 203 has always had a reputation for having a considerably weathered livery, earning it the nickname Patches, despite the engine being one of the best runners on the roster. So now a once ridiculed engine has finally received a new paint job that makes it unique, now for a much more positive reason. Continuing the Heritage Fleet program started by New Haven 222, the Millennium livery is basically a variation of the more iconic white, blue, and red Beachball livery that 208 currently wears. But the most distinguishable feature of this engine is the inclusion of the original MTA M logo and the word Central underneath, representing how Penn Central operated commuter services along the Hudson and Harlem lines in cooperation with the MTA before being merged into Conrail, who fully handed off the services to the MTA in the 80s. Up next is the other railroad that the MTA owns, namely the Long Island Railroad 101, an EMD SW1001 painted into its as-built blue and white livery. Instead of being used for regular passenger trains, 101 is one of 8 switchers purchased by the LIRR for local freight and switching duties around Queens, with this engine being leased off to New York and Atlantic Railway in the late 90s, where it still stayed in Queens. But to the surprise of everyone, this engine emerged out of NIR's Fresh Pond shops in its 1977 as-built blue and white livery, also sporting the MTA M logo, with the words Long Island underneath, as it was believed that NYAR ended their lease of 101 early in order for the LIRR to reacquire it. This comes as an especially welcome surprise for Long Island Rail fans, since the railroad has not supported an official heritage unit program in the past, with some repaints such as 105 being painted back into standard blue and yellow in order to achieve a standard fleet livery. So several rail fans are happy to see something other than the usual livery on Long Island rails. Lastly is Delaware Lackawanna 4068, an Alco RS3 also painted into its as-built DNH lightning stripe livery. In collaboration with Genesee Valley Transportation, this RS3 was repainted in Scranton after previously wearing the DL's Lackawanna Railroad-inspired freight livery in order to represent the various railroads that once served Scranton, Pennsylvania, in this case the DNH Penn Division. This repaint was completed at the same time as the restoration of Nickel Plate 190, an Alco PA acquired from Portland, Oregon, which will be holding excursions in the coming weeks, while the newly repainted RS3 will be running alongside fellow Alco engines built in the 50s and 60s. I for one think all of these heritage units look amazing, as each of them have their own features that make them unique. 1080 is an EMD and resulted from a Facebook vote, 203 includes a lesser-known livery for MN's FL9s, 101 was reacquired by its home railroad for the sake of making a heritage unit, and 4068 represents the newest heritage unit on a railroad filled with iconic Alcos. The absolute timing and circumstances around these 4 heritage units are incredibly unique and practically unheard of in the past, as I strongly consider making these 4 heritage units the top story of the month, but we'll get to the winner of that title later on. Speaking of which, here's some interesting news. A documentary about the Thomas the Tank Engine fandom named An Unlikely Fandom is to premiere at the Railway 200 celebrations in Derby. Transit vlogger Simply Railway has started a night train company called Knox. The British monarch is to end King Charles's royal train. SNCF has abandoned plans for a Normandy high-speed rail line. Messe Berlin launched InnoTrans Asia with their first event to take place in Singapore. The Souxi Inland Container Terminal became the first elevated rail container terminal in the world with 126-foot tall well car cranes. TransPennine Express is offering therapy dogs at stations. Brightline has launched a partnership with JetBlue. NJT is offering pizza and pints by highlighting pizzerias and breweries within walking distance from NJT stations. Metro trialed a party car with a DJ and coffee. Amtrak told people to touch grass in an Instagram story. Former Amtrak CEO Richard Anderson is now on the board of Norfolk Southern. Ram has started making trucks for the NASCAR Truck Series. The Chuggington pilot was recently released to YouTube. The Trolley solution is to be released on Steam. And BNSF 9400 is the first SC70 Mac to be preserved, as it's also the first SC70 Mac ever built. Now here's the follow-up news section for articles covering stories from previous episodes. CNO 614 has been delivered to the Strasbourg Railroad for restoration, while TriMet is to donate their Type 1 LRV to the Oregon Electric Railway Museum. Amtrak P42 NPCUs have entered service on the Empire Corridor. China's hydrogen-powered tram has entered service, along with OBB's railjet Stadler Flirts. Tentative labor agreements have been made for NJT as a result of a strike, as well as for Via Rail to prevent their own strike. Metro North released concept art of their BAC Siemens charger that runs on both overhead and battery for Penn Station access. The Illinois legislature failed to pass a transit funding bill, potentially resulting in the abandonment of several CTA subway lines, pace buses, and some metro services, although the state does have until September to hold an emergency session to re-vote on reinstating funding. And SEPTA voted to approve a budget that will result in almost half of their rail services being cut, alongside several bus routes, in addition to Pittsburgh BRT. However, I would like to emphasize that this is not entirely over for SEPTA and other PA transit agencies, as the most recent transit bill that could provide the necessary funding to save these services passed the PA State House and is currently awaiting a vote from the State Senate at the time of recording this. This is why I'm strongly encouraging all of you to reach out to your state legislators, especially PA state senators whose votes determine the fate of SEPTA, to emphasize the importance of public transit as a more efficient and cleaner way of transporting millions of people every day, and that the loss of these services would be devastating for not just those regions, but the country as a whole. It's not too late to make a change. Go out there and tell everyone about the importance of rail transit, especially to those who have the power to make a change. In other news, Valley Metro Rail in Phoenix opened their B-Line extension, which now evenly split the system into two lines. LA Metro opened their LAX Metro Center light rail and bus station, finally giving the massive airport a rail connection. South Shoreline opened their Michigan City, Indiana station after completing a lengthy grade separation project that removed street running through the town. Omnitrack started service of the Santa Maria Valley Railroad. Northern Railway service between Wigan and Bolton has been electrified. TTC gained control of the Ellington Crosstown LRT, also known as Line 5, while the same city started construction for their East Harbor Transit Hub. Spaceballs 2 has been announced for 2027. Direct Trace has tested their own coupling autonomous testbed. Stadler has released the Euro Do 4 as their newest 4-axle electric engine. PESA released concept art of their Gemma 3.0 for RCP. CAP is to make LRVs for New Taipei. JR East is to refurbish the E657 class for a proposed luxury train service, while Lumo is to acquire and refurb the Class 222. Alstom has completed Darth Vader EMUs for Norway, while Stadler completed coaches for KTZ. Italy has started testing their hydrogen-powered switcher. Romanian Railways has placed their Leon DMUs into service. CPKC has received their first original engines, namely ET44AHs. MTA 904 has been acquired and repainted as New Hampshire Northern 1802. The Nevada State Railroad Museum restored their U.S. Army FMH 1244. CSX carried most of the military vehicles for the U.S. military's 250th anniversary parade. And new bicentennial units have been released for the Wheeling and Lake Erie and the East Penn Railroad in anticipation of America's 250th anniversary next year. After all that, it is now time for this month's Meme of the Month. This month's Meme of the Month is 6325 Day. And now, the top story of the June 2025 Pensyfan Periodical is MTA reveals M9A! With the state of New York once again taking home the title, the MTA finally revealed official concept art of their M9As, their additional order of M9 railcars from the mid-2010s, but shockingly they'll be using M7 car bodies from Bombardier, now Alstom, instead of using the existing M9 car bodies from Kawasaki. Technically, talks of an additional M9A order were always brought up here and there once every few MTA board meetings, especially after the initial order of Kawasaki M9s was not enough to entirely replace the aging M3s on the LARR. This search for an M9A only became more needed once the MTA started highlighting several complaints regarding the delivery and specs of the initial M9 order, as this ultimately resulted in Kawasaki losing the contract to Alstom to build the additional order of M9s for the LARR and later Metro North. But to the surprise of most rail fans like myself, the MTA opted to modify the existing M7 car body designed in the early 2000s, which makes up the majority of trains currently running on both the LARR and Metro North, all while including the same design features of the original M9s, including blue seats, outlets at every seat, a blue and yellow stripe, and front exterior destination panels. Out of all the railcar manufacturers in the American market, Alstom's acquisition of Bombardier was truly their ace up their sleeve in this bid, as Alstom was now able to offer a modified version of a railcar type that the host railroad was already used to for decades. The reason as to why I'm so surprised by the reuse of the M7 design for the M9A is because a similar situation occurred in the mid-80s with the NYC Subway's R62A order to supplement the R62s. The initial batch of R62s were built by Kawasaki, while the additional R62A order was built by Bombardier, now Alstom. But the R62A used the exact same car body as the original R62 instead of Bombardier's own design. Somewhat similarly, Metro North's own orders of M3As and M7As were built by the same manufacturers as the base order, but only had slight but noticeable modifications from the original versions. Never before had a railroad opted to use the design of a previous model to supplement a newer design, but I do wish the MTA the best of luck with the delivery and operation of these railcars, as I do hope that the design and delivery process will go more smoothly due to the familiarity of the reliable M7 design. Thank you everyone for watching this month's episode of the Pensyfan Periodical. There have been a lot of rail news headlines for the month, and it will be very interesting to see what the future has in store for all these articles, as I personally feel this month has been one of the most eventful this year, thus making it one of my best periodicals in a while. Thank you again for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Have a good day.